Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Traxion Sim Racing podcast. As ever, I'm Tom and also joined by Tom. And joining us today is Misha Charoudin. Tom, who's that?
Well, Misha Charoudin has been on my timeline on Instagram for years, mainly because he does hot laps around the Nordschleife, right? So he takes somebody else's car from the car park and they do the hot lap, put the cameras in, and it's great. It's really interesting. Who doesn't want to watch hot laps around the Nordschleife? But then, of course, more recently, he was racing with Manuel Metzger, SuperGT, Jimmy Broadbent for Bilstein around the Nordschleife. And so I was kind of keeping up with that content. And then he released the Vulcan Alpha wing. And then he was involved almost a year ago today in the Kunos, I'm not calling it a leak, but the nod towards the ACC DLC for the Nordschleife. So he's in and around the sim racing world, and he was at the Sim Racing Expo in Dortmund in cardboard cutout form on the Novus stand. So we spoke to our friends at Novus. We tried out their sim rig, their motion rig, and they pointed out that Misha has one of their rigs and said that we should chat. We're going to keep this intro short because Misha is one of the most incredibly interesting, open and generous people that I've ever had the pleasure of speaking to on this podcast. And he shares so much with us about his involvement with Kunos. And listen carefully. He also talks about his entrepreneurial tendencies and how how he works and how committed he is. He talks about life in the paddock with Super GT and Jimmy Broadbent. And then during the community questions, a couple of very interesting stories, one including Robert Kubica comes out, and it's fascinating. So if you're not one for long podcasts, I'd recommend maybe listening to this in two parts because it doesn't tail off. It is equally interesting all the way through, and I was very pleased to be able to speak to him. He's a very, very cool guy.
Well, you mentioned community questions there. Thank you very much to everybody who sent those in. Don't forget, you can always send them in before each episode, provided we've got the guests aligned at the right time on our Discord. That's traxion.gg/Discord. But for now, here's Tom's interview with Misha.
Misha, welcome to the TraxionGG podcast. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for the invite.
No, anytime. You're an incredibly busy man, and I think this is the fastest podcast we've ever organised. We were at the Novus stand on Sunday, and I saw your cardboard cutout at the Sim Racing Expo, like a lot of people did, and thought, that's the guy that we should get on the TraxionGG podcast. And the guys over at Novus were like, maybe we can make it happen.
And here we are. We made it happen.
Yeah. Now you have been incredibly busy, and you didn't manage to get to the Sim Racing Expo in person, but you were clearly there in spirit, especially on the Novus stand, and I'll come to that later. But firstly, congrats on your team's win at the Nurburgring on Saturday. That's 3 wins this season.
Yes, it's been quite a spectacular season. I was kind of unfortunate that I was able to participate with the last win because I had a wedding to attend of a good friend of mine, and maybe we'll get in the podcast later on that I will tell you that this year I learned that it's sometimes good to take priorities other than racing, let's say, in life. That's why I decided, guys, I like you, but I'm going to join my friend and attend for his very special moment. The same goes for Novus, unfortunately, because the idea was that I would at least try to attend Sunday if we had the race happening on Friday, Saturday. But I also told them my friend is getting married, and they said hey, totally understand. Can we have a cardboard cutout of you? Sure thing.
It was incredibly popular. There was a lot of influencers and streamers posing for selfies and doing some quite invasive things to that cardboard cutout. So you weren't
imagine.
you weren't missed. Well, I mean, it's an interesting point to start on, isn't it? Because you do have fingers in a lot of pies. You're not a one-track pony, as it were. There isn't just the one thing that you do. You're probably most well known for the content that you create on the Nordschleife, where if you haven't seen it and you're listening to this, you essentially go, you use other people's cars, they sit in the passenger seat, and you take them for a hot lap, and then you record their reactions and things that happen on track, and we'll get to that. But then, you also have Vulcan Alpha, you also have the racing series, and then there's perhaps some other kind of consultancy in the gaming world that maybe we'll get onto later. You seem to have a lot going on. How do you manage it all?
I don't even know. Like, surprisingly, I mean, luckily, I know how to prioritize things nowadays, even though I am busy with a lot of things with Vulcan Alpha, with 3MD, with the YouTube content creation, whether it's on track or off the track, because this year I even had a great idea. Let's start a second YouTube channel. And it's actually performing almost as good as the main one, so to say. And indeed, like you said, like some consultancy and other things, and a couple of other businesses that are coming up. But yeah, I don't know how I manage that. I guess it's just like I said, being able to prioritize things, and most importantly, I think needs to be said, having a very good team behind me. But that also is again only since I would say this year that I actually have people employed for like a big team for to actually run Vulcan Alpha, run 3MD, help me out with editing, although the majority of it I still do. Maybe onboards not so much, only important videos to me where I think like, okay, this might be sensitive content. I really want to make sure that this video is done really completely the way I want to do it. But all the thumbnail creation, all the titles, all the posting, I'm still in charge of that. If you're listening to this and thinking like, oh, I want to help Misha out with thumbnails, no, please don't. I mean, I appreciate it, but I have people in-house, but there's a specific reason why I'm a control freak, and this is one of the things I do not want to let go. And most importantly, having my wife support me with everything and endeavors, and having understanding when I am gone literally the whole day. Because, for example, earlier this year, the main highlight of the year for us as a racing team was, of course, 24 hours of Nurburgring. I took that very seriously because it was opportunity given to us by Beerstein to race in an M4 GT4. And this was not something that like, yeah, we can rock up there and just have some fun and create some content and people gonna watch it anyway because it's something special in the car and whatever whatsoever. No, everybody from our team took it extremely seriously. And this meant lots of physical preparation, lots of mental preparation, lots of time on the sim as well. But again, me, after driving for a decade at the Nürburgring and a bit more time outside of that as well beforehand, I can guarantee you that the best way to become a better driver, aside from sim racing and muscle memory and practice, is actually your stamina improvement. Having the perfect condition. This is why you see quite often the off-season footage of Formula One drivers doing extremely crazy stuff with their neck training, with really cardio training, like the stuff you would see from Rocky movie where Ivan Drago would be completely, all covered with all the sensors, etc. They do the same for F1 because cardio conditioning is extremely important. Again, why F1 drivers lose, I think, 3 kilos after a race on average or so. Anyway, wanted to say, for me this year, the preparations were like 6 times a week, I would say, physical training. This would mean in the morning, 1 hour of cardio, in the evening, 1.5 hours of weightlifting, in between some sim practice, then having the business run, and then where do you put your wife and 2 dogs in, like to have some time. And again, this is for me the biggest, I would say I'm the most grateful to her for understanding, to knowing how important it was for me, for the team, and for the general future. Because she knows when that I'm extremely hard on myself whenever I cannot perform, and when I know like I could have done better had I haven't given the chance. If there is some external factor, like I don't know, car failed, oil spill, crash because someone else crashed into us. But if I know that there was a failure because of me, I would have sleepless nights out of it because I know I could have avoided that. So as you see, I have a very big ADHD and I get sidetracked and we roll this train of thought. So
No, I think just from those last couple of minutes, I think about 8 questions have popped into my head. But I will talk about racing and Assetto Corsa EVO and sims and stuff because those are all the questions that our community wants to ask. But I'm going to be selfish and ask personally. I'm always curious when I meet people in the sim racing and racing industry how the entrepreneurship fits in, because you seem to be running multiple businesses. You seem to be very creative. You like a lot of people who are running these businesses, you just can't stop. There's always more ideas that they keep piling on top and on top and on top, and then you can't let them. You have to act on them. So is this something Have you always been entrepreneurial, or is it have you been inspired by kind of your success on the YouTube channel?
The funny thing is, I would say, last year, maybe year before, I realized what I can. I don't want to sound arrogant or something, but I realized my potential with things I can do. The problem in the past, whether it was my youth or education or etc., whether it was my mom not really supporting me in stuff what I was doing, she was happy, or she was, most importantly, she was like, okay, hey, you're healthy, make sure to finish your education, get a job, and do not try to do any stupid stuff. So whenever I would do stupid stuff, to her, accordingly to stupid stuff, like I would participate with national drag racing championship of scooters. So I would build like one of the fastest scooters in the world. 70cc. Like it sounds funny nowadays, but back then was like, as a 16, 17, 18 year old, like going
I have
extremely
to
fast.
admit,
Yeah.
I have to admit, my research didn't go deep enough to find that fact.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So when I was doing these kind of things, she was like, well, what do you want to do with that? What's gonna that bring you to life? And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I don't know, maybe not much, but whichever project I would take, whether it was a silly scooter that I would aim to build the best or fastest in the world, or the most significant one, or later that would transform to my car, the first Subaru Impreza GC8 that I just bought to get from A to B, and eventually it was one of the most powerful Subaru Imprezas in the world with 700 horsepower, driving time attack championship, and later having Volkswagen Golf 4 TDI that I ended up spending lots of money and building it, or working for other businesses, whether it was back then Ring Garage or later in the last 7 years it was Apex, I would put all of my energy into it and give it absolute all. And again, whether it was a car or someone else's project, if I start something doing, I'm push it completely all until I'm like I might die doing that. And like in 2019, I had moments where I would just like I would have a burnout at the end of the year because I was doing too much. So I learned a lot of how to take important rest. But in the last 2 years, I thought like, listen, if I can put so much thought and passion and energy into something like a scooter or a car, or in this case, of course, also YouTube channel, because since September 2020, I haven't missed a single daily upload. Why can I not do the same with starting a business, running a business? Because the main issue, of course, with starting a business is fear. What if I fail? Well, what if I crash on the track? Well, shit happens. You learn from it, and next time you try not to crash, and you try to go maybe smoother or faster. The failures, they belong in life. If you're gonna be scared of failure, you might as well not do anything, and that's the main issue. So, of course, so far this year has been a very turbulent year when it comes to starting Vulcan Alpha. There were lots and lots of challenges. We've changed the direction of the business, I think, probably like three times or so, because first we were thinking like, okay, let's focus on one thing, then like, you know what, it seems that our customers actually want to have this. It seems that the opportunity opened elsewhere, and now we started figuring out, and of course it's lots of things. So yeah, I guess that's like me trying to answer your question. Indeed, I'm really passion driven with whichever project it is. And now I just decided, like, let's do this, because the bottom line is the reason why I started doing that is although I love YouTube and creating content, but I do not see myself driving every single day forever for the rest of my life on this same track, which again, I love. But end of last year, I actually openly said, I want to do more outside of Nurburgring. I do not want to, in the long run, be dependent of YouTube, but to be able to do it for fun and just like do all these other things on the side, do not have all the eggs in one basket. But I also do not want to do only stuff at the Nurburgring. And so far this year has been quite successful. We had quite some events in UK. I've been invited to a lot more events, but I couldn't do it due to personal commitments. Elsewhere, I have a few more. I had a World Time Attack Championship in Australia, racing for Hyundai, which was, I think, what was the pinnacle for me. Like, I want to do stuff outside of Nürburgring. No, let's not go to UK. Let's go to completely other side of the world. So it's going quite well. I have a couple of events coming up in Dubai as well. So we're really like, I'm putting my word where my mouth is, so to say, and exciting times ahead.
It sounds like fear passion, and inherent competitiveness are three qualities that straddle both racing and motorsport and entrepreneurship, and it feels like one has led to the other in your case, which is incredible.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to also mention, I mean, we don't have to go too deep into that because I've done also other podcasts and about explaining my upbringing, etc. Was born in Russia. I grew up in the Netherlands. So when I moved from Russia when I was 10 years old to the Netherlands, I was an outsider. Like whereas first I was someone more or less of the same community, now it was like completely something else. And to get things done or be noticed, I had to really stand out. I had to outperform others. There was always a challenge. I could not be average because people already look at you below their own community. It's a normal thing. It's not because like Dutch people are racist. No, that's one of the most inclusive countries in the world. But like when you're an outsider, people already think like, yeah, you're not part of us. So if you like average, you're still there. So you need to outperform to be kind of tiny bit on their level or a bit above. And that's always for me was the thing. Like if you're doing something, do it in the best possible way because then no one can say you haven't done enough. They can have all the other excuses to make themselves feel better, but yeah, try to do always the best.
I love that. It's incredibly inspiring. And talking of inspiring, the team that you're racing with Manuel Metzger, Nurburgring 24-hour race winner and all-round green hell legend, and of course with two guys that our listeners will be far more familiar with, SuperGT and Jimmy Broadbent. Now, putting you four together, it's an incredible melting pot of different experiences, and I mean that both in life as well as in racing and sim versus real, etc. How do all of your various experiences complement each other within the confines of a single race team?
I mean, tremendously, as you can see. It's actually quite interesting because we are also different, but this is why we like Diana, my business partner and a very good friend of mine, she likes to call our company a dysfunctional family that actually functions, is able to create something very cool together. And I think the same goes for our not sim racing, but our racing team consisting out of half of them are sim racers, professional ones. The same way it goes to happen in that way. We're all talented drivers in whichever way possible. We have, of course, Manuel Metzger, who has proven everything he needs to prove because in 2016 he has won the 24 Hours of Nurburgring, which was the most challenging 24 Hours of Nurburgring ever, probably with the hail coming down. If you are familiar with the footage, there was like hailing, cars couldn't like go like 1 meter further because they were just sliding on ice. He's won that, so there's nothing left to prove. He came also second, I think, one time. Then we have Jimmy, who actually came from nothing in a shed that everyone knows, and I think he's been quite open about it, that sim racing more or less saved his life because he was having lots of depression, and then later on he managed to build what he is now, and he's able to do things that many of us, including myself, were never able to dream about of being able to do, and here he is today. But even though he has reached already quite a lot, he is still having the same hunger and passion to be outperforming others. I would say out of all four of us, he is the one that's pushing the hardest and the most. That you can also see in his lap times because he's actually, he's not faster than Manuel, who is like an absolute rocket, factory driver he's been doing that. He's literally a factory driver now still. But he's really like extremely fast, Jimmy. He's always like outperforming us and outperforming himself race after race after race after race. He always has this like, I need to go out there, and I really do not want to think someone thinks that I didn't give my best, and I want to be the best one. And that shows. And if this is where he finds, let's say, reward or passion or love in what he's doing, that's great. We of course also need to say that it brings some unnecessary risk sometimes, but that is what makes people stand out and be a professional race car driver, because that's why everyone adores Ayrton Senna. That's why people sometimes adore or hate Max Verstappen, because you are pushing to the limit. Sometimes it goes wrong, but if you don't push it to the limit, then you're going to be just average and nobody's going to care about you. So Jimmer is doing that. Steve is completely the opposite spectrum. He's still fast, but he's very smooth. And also, my wife says that Steve is the most calm, down to earth, and the coolest frog in the pond that she's ever seen. We've had multiple occasions where I would, like, I don't know, destroy half the paddock after stuff like that happened to me. So earlier this year in Portimao, we had the opportunity to drive the GT2 Porsche 911 GT2 RS Club Sport Club Sport EVO by Manthey Racing. Very specific people who know, they know it's like one of the best GT2 cars you can get. By having the opportunity, this means we had the possibility of doing that after paying 1,000 euros for, I think, 15 laps or so. So it's quite a lot of money. But we were thinking, like, you know what, we're here anyway, and let's do it. We're fortunate enough. Let's have some fun. So all three of us decided to do it. Jimmy and I made a video. Steve had the intention of making a video. He made a video, but he had his camera, for whatever reason, set up for time lapse. So he threw away his 1,000 euro ride, so to say, for in time lapse. But he's like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm gonna make like a fun Instagram reel of how I have like the fastest lap ever because it's time lapsed, and he was like totally cool about it. And then later with 24 hours of Nurburgring, for people who've been following our adventures, they might know that he went too fast in code 60 zone. So because of the speeding, they banned him from racing 24 hours of Nürburgring and also the following race. There was quite a harsh penalty, but we all agreed with the penalty because what he did, even though it was not intentional, of course, it was a simple mistake because he didn't see the flag. But hey, rules are rules, so you have to accept them, and nobody was against it. But even then, he was like, "Oh yeah, okay, like it is what it is. I accept it, and fine." He was still there for the team. He was supporting everyone. He was still making video, and it was all cool. Like I said, he's a very coolest. So we have Manuel, who is extremely fast and super professional, giving us all tips. We have Jimmy, who is like really pushing himself to the absolute limits. We have Steve, who is completely cool, down to earth, and there's me, something everything in between, and tries to be the funny guy and making content, and also sees the serious stuff of it, but also tries not to be too serious about it, because I also understand there are more important things in life. If you let the thing that you try to enjoy the most, which is racing, ruin your life because you stopped enjoying it, you might as well stop doing it. So I try to really balance it all out and see the fun of it. And whenever I have an incident or someone else has an incident, I actually try to make the best of it, which is in this case, actually, let's be open about it, the views and the drama that brings to the team. And at the end of the day, this was also the reason why this project exists, is because it was actually, I would say, my project. I went to Bilstein and said, like, hey, let's do this. And they said, like, you know what? That's a freaking great idea. Who do you want to have on the team? And I know of you guys. So we ended up having Jimmy and Steve. We had a number 4. We had initial meeting to have a number 4, which was another content creator, who decided last moment before the announcement actually to drop out because he wanted to focus on his own YouTube stuff, which I respect and understand. Which is, and by now, when you see what he is doing, he's definitely top of the automotive world when it comes to content creation. So he did the very right decision. But we're kind of juggling. Like I said, everyone has a very specific feature of their own, and this is why we have this kind of great, I would say, functioning team, whether it is on the track as race car drivers or off the track, because we're content creators. And yes, this team, of course, is possible. We're able to do it because it's, of course, of the views that we bring. It's there's a big marketing force behind it. And I think we seem to function quite nicely. And also, more importantly, finally, just to summarize, we also function outside of this whole professional racing spectrum or YouTube career. We also always, like last Christmas, we spent holidays together in Croatia, so we're like good friends outside of that, and we know our own deepest secrets. So yeah, let's see.
It must be a lovely safety blanket almost every time you get together in the garage and in the paddock with these races being spread out through the year to kind of reflect back on the challenges that you've faced, knowing full well that everyone else is probably has something very similar, because you're always exposed to criticism and comments on YouTube channels and all that sort of stuff. So it must be nice knowing that you've always got, in a couple of months' time or a month's time, whatever it is, you've got that little get together where you can kind of put an arm around each other and consciously or subconsciously mentor each other through these careers that are totally new. No one's done this before, right? What you're doing. There is no rule book to follow, right? You're having to come up with the creativity yourself.
Yeah, of course. That's the challenging aspect. That's also the best part. Like, if you would indeed have to, so like we are now probably like almost half an hour into the podcast, and we still haven't like really like we scratched the surface of what I'm doing, like in life in general. And that's quite a unique situation to be in, and indeed it's great, but lots of, let's say, like completely different side thought is a lot of local guys who've known me like for decades, or not decades, or a decade, or here local Nurburgring guys, and they know what I'm doing, and they either love it or hate it. And some of them say, like, you know what, there is not going to be a second of you. No one is going to reach the level that you are doing right now. Not because I sincerely hope someone will be doing that, but I've been doing that for 10 years now at the Nurburgring. Next year is going to be my 10th year. And the first 6 or 7 years, I was not even like making money of it, like not being able to survive of it. I was just making videos, sometimes daily, sometimes not. The last 4 years daily, yes, and just putting it out there, and sometimes getting 100 views, sometimes 1,000, sometimes some special car would get a bit more views, but it was not getting like enough traction until some point it finally got traction and it gotten up. And now I can, okay, when I put a video out and it gets like 50,000 views because whatever reason, it's just another GT3 that I've driven already 50 times and people like don't care about it, and I drive some shitbox and gets millions of views. But in comparison, other local guys who drive a lot faster than me because they also are there for different reasons, and they are also faster drivers, or they know the car and they have fantastic video or content on their hand, and they put it out and gets like 50 views. It's kind of discouraging.
Yeah, it's the story, right?
It's a story. It's a story. It's discouraging, and to be able to do it like every day because it's time and you're not getting money in return or whatsoever. You need to have a completely different mindset. So, yeah, it's quite a unique situation I've gotten myself into, but I also do not want to do it for the rest of my life, like I said earlier. So,
well, let's dive into some more topics then, because I want to get to that in terms of the plans for the future. But this is a sim racing podcast, so we need to talk about sim racing.
Let's do that.
You have an incredible sim rig at your Vulcan Alpha garage, which, by the way, I think is quite poetic in terms of the story of Misha to have the rig in the garage anyway. And it's built by Novus. It's a full motion rig. I actually tried out a similar version on Sunday at the Sim Racing Expo in Dortmund. Tell us about your rig. How did that come about, and what do you use it for?
How did that come about? Well, Novus actually, it's quite simple, to be honest. It came about like a majority of very cool things that happened in my life through coincidence. In this case, it was Novus actually sending me a DM on Instagram, inviting me to the Sim Racing Expo last year. I couldn't do it because we had, again, I think, a race happening last season with Bierstein team. So I said, like, sorry, I appreciate the invite, but sim racing is not even my big thing. If it was at the Nurburgring like it was years in the past, I would have happily walked over, but I'm not gonna drive half a day to the other side of, not really other side of Germany, but a few hours, and like not my thing. But since you're in Slovenia and my wife is Croatian and we spent Christmas and holidays in Croatia, when we will be driving to Croatia, I'll happily stop by your facility and see who you are, what you are, and etc. So I made a stop there. We got extremely drunk, I think. Yep, definitely. Well, because Eastern European things, just Slav Balkan things, which was good to see what kind of people, because you're most honest. And then the following day, I got to try their sim racing rig, and I like the people, I like the product, and they asked like, "Hey, would you like to do something together?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. What do you have in mind? Like, if you want to, you can put your sim rig at my place, and I'll happily try it out. Because I love the product from the first time I sat on it. Because I do not want to be associated with brands or products that I personally don't like. Because I cannot, like, people who are familiar with my content, I never push sales or whatsoever.
Yeah,
I just use it myself because I like it, and hopefully it gives people interest to figure out why I like certain things. So the same goes with that. I said like, hey, if you want to, I'll happily use it, and you can put it on my sim. Sorry, at my new spot. And they were very happy with it, because it was for them a good opportunity. It was for me a good opportunity. It went hand in hand. I like the people. I like the product. And there is also nothing behind it, because I hope they don't mind me saying that, because I know when I was what's it called? I was away, either get changed or something, and they ended up talking to my wife. They said like, "How is he so normal? Why is he like?" What the hell? We expected he's gonna ask us like 50,000 euro per year or something to promote our stuff. And I'm like, yeah, if I would be doing that, I would probably driving now. I would not driving now. I would have probably a big garage of lots of supercars, because I'm really into sales and promoting stuff. But I want to have fun in life, and this is why we have like a non-commitment agreement, and I use their stuff because I genuinely like it. They work with me because they hopefully genuinely like me, and that's all there is to it, basically. And the most, I would say, funny slash no ironic part about this whole thing is that I drive on the sim probably, if I'm lucky, one time a month, because I'm too busy with all the other stuff. Off season, I drive a lot more. During season, I have the real track that I drive every day, and I like literally
Yeah.
that's the main reason. But off season, I'm there all the time, or like significantly more often. But my team here, they're always on the sim. So it's actually like people. Aside from me, they're using it more than I do, which is on one hand ironic, but it's also very good. Like, yeah.
I guess in some ways you're like the anti-sim racer, right? Because you get to go on the real track basically every single day in any car that well, I mean, I don't really know how it works when you're in the car park and you wander around, you see a car you like and say, hey, can I drive it? But you essentially have the truest simulation ever, because you walk into that car park, pick a car and go around the Nordschleife, right? And then when you come back to the simulator, that's the exception. Whereas for most people, it would be totally the other way around. You do thousands of laps of the Nordschleife on iRacing or Assetto Corsa, or whatever your track of, whatever your sim of choice is, and then once a year you might get to go around the Nordschleife in a ring taxi or your hire car if you're feeling really brave. So you kind of have the total opposite experience.
Yes. Yeah. Some people, like, recently I see it in the comments. They say like, Misha is living Gran Turismo or Assetto Corsa lobby in real life, like, because I literally just like pick a car and go. Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Or perhaps an Assetto Corsa EVO simulator in real life.
Yeah.
So it feels obviously we've seen the trailers and we've seen your breakdown of the trailers, and we were lucky enough on Friday morning in Dortmund to have one of the first hands-on experience of Evo, and Tom from TraxionGG, editor in chief. He interviewed Marco about the plans and the grand vision, and I think it's fairly well documented now that there's talks of some open world elements. There's a big Nordschleife presence, and maybe even the roads around the Nordschleife. That's been in the trailer. That's kind of all all public, and we saw the trainers in the footwell, and everyone's like, oh, can we now customize our characters? And there was that open shot of the engine. We're like, oh, hang on, so can we modify the cars in the game? And it feels like it's almost going to be where earlier when I said you get to just walk into the car park, pick a car, and do a lap. It feels like that's almost kind of the feel that the AC Evo is going for.
Right.
It's like the Misha. Assetto Corsa Misha is what it should be called.
That's how I called my video. And all the speculations I've mentioned in my video, they have not been neglected, nor have I been sued by Kunos or 505 for breaching NDA.
Well, interesting that there is an NDA. That's interesting to know. on the 24th
Maybe
of
with
October,
the previous projects that we were running together, like the Competizione DLC pack. So I don't know.
Okay, that's exactly what I was about to ask. So on the 24th of October, 2023. That's nearly 1 year ago to that's tomorrow of the time of recording, which is the Wednesday before this episode goes out.
Yeah.
You posted a photo on Instagram of you trying something at Kunos. And a lot of people assume that was just ACC because then the DLC came out. But now, given that the parity between yourself and the new game, it might be reasonable to guess that perhaps you've been involved with helping them create the feel of the Nordschleife in Evo. However, I know you obviously can't answer that question, so I'm just going to leave that one there and ask about the experience of working with Kunos on ACC, because we know that did happen. What was it like working with developers on a track that you know intimately?
It was amazing. It was really cool because let me tell you how it actually happened. I met them the first time I think it was in 2020, or it might be 21, but I think it was in 2020. And back then, they actually came over to Apex, the company I co-founded and was working with at the time. They stayed at the hotel. They I think they had some cars rented. They also had their own cars, which is cool because they're all car enthusiasts themselves, which is very important to mention that they love the place. They love the Nurburgring. They've been coming here themselves for over a decade. They know the vibe. They know all the local stores, all the local parts. They know the track and all the drama around it. And from what I heard from them, is that they watch all my videos basically, or like very important ones, not every single day of course, but they are familiar with me and with my content. And back then they said like, hey, we are from Kunos, we are like, what, who? Back then I knew Assetto Corsa, but I was like not into sim racing whatsoever. Like, from who, from what? Like, this sim racing game. Yeah, okay. So like, yeah, let's have a talk, let's see what we can do together, we have some plans and this and that, and so we sat down. And for me the most important thing was again that even though I understand the potential and value of working with this kind of big brands and etc. whatsoever, but having experienced many of those opportunities and biggest brands, and I work with and for hypercar manufacturers and etc. and biggest brands that you can name of, at the end of the day for me it's just a product, and I am working with people. And if someone is, excuse my French, an absolute asshole, I really have no interest working with them. Or if someone has absolutely zero clue of what he is doing, I have no interest working with them, because as by now you might know, I'm quite busy. And the bottom line is, even with all these things that I do, I enjoy cuddling with my wife and dogs at the end of the day more than driving any kind of hypercar. So let alone dedicating my time to someone else, so that's my general rule in life. So with them, I found out that those guys love cars, they love the Nordschleife, they're driving it themselves, they know what they're doing, what they're talking about, they know me. So like, okay, we can find common language. And we ended up talking through the years, through lots of things, like for random stuff most of the time, because I have like their private contact, and we like talking about, Davide, for example, he bought GR86, and then I bought the GR86. So we're like talking about whose engine is going to die first. It was mine. I think he sold his before his died, so good on him.
Clever.
Yeah, exactly. So we have very good chemistry together, basically. And last year, I just I was planning on going to Italy for whatever reason. I said like, hey, I'm gonna stop by your place because I was traveling with my wife, and I said, let me stop by Kunos basically to talk about things. Uh, and then as we were talking about things, then they're like, oh, have a look at this. And that was actually the DLC for what's it called? For Assetto Corsa Competizione. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, yeah, Nordschleife and whatsoever, and that was all great. And I got to drive it, and as I'm driving, I'm saying like, okay, this part of the track is not correct. Here you're missing a tree. Here you're missing a sign. And they're like, fuck. So like they start making notes and like, and then one of the other guys, like he said it in Italian, like in the like he told to Davide, it's like in an Italian way. My Italian is not that good, but the literal translation was like, what the fuck were you thinking what was gonna happen? Of course he's gonna like make all these comments like, and now we need to change the whole game. And like, so a lot of things they actually implemented in the final version of the DLC, which was very freaking cool. That they actually, they could have said like, you know what, Misha, yeah, of course, but the end of the day is just a sim, and we already done with our development, and we need to. You can guess by now that we need to focus our resources on actually developing EVO, which is going to be significantly more important and bigger project. But no, they actually spent quite some time taking my input and turning into that, which I found like really cool. I did not expect that at all. I was thinking maybe they're gonna do that for the next game, which is in this
It's because
case
they
EVO.
care, right?
Yeah, and that's again like emphasis of because they really care. They want to bring the best possible version of what is possible. And that was fantastic. And indeed, yeah, I made a picture. I blurred out the screen, but I forgot to blur out the HUD for whatever reason. Because for me, it's like was like whatever, like it's like as long as I don't show the Nordschleife, but okay, HUD maybe is visible. But then all the Sherlock people online, they're like, why the hell is Mr. Nurburgring-Nordschleife at Kunos, which is clearly playing a Assetto Corsa Competizione? What's there behind it? And it exploded like the sim racing world. Basically, everyone started speculating on forums. There was actually quite a lot of. I hope Kunos or 505 don't mind saying me that. There was quite a lot of internal stress that I might have leaked something or speculated something, but it actually showed that there was a lot of interest for the game, a lot of interest for DLC, and most importantly, there was a lot of interest for actual Nordschleife in that game. What was the main interest for everyone? So DLC was consisted out of two packs basically. It had the GT2 cars coming into the game, and it had the Nordschleife. And realizing how much interest there is for the Nordschleife, there were more focus put on actually promoting the Nordschleife. And I think this is actually that also showed eventually, because when I look the reception of the audience, everyone is super hyped about having to play the most realistic and accurate version of the Nordschleife, whereas the GT2 cars like, yeah, okay, cool, they're there, but like whatever, because even in real life the GT2 championship is not really that well represented. So yeah,
it's a fantastic story. It's so, do you know what? And I've come away from 4 days at the Sim Racing Expo, and one of the key takeaways is that all of these brands that you see, whether it's a wheel manufacturer, whether it's a bit of software, whether it's a game developer, they're all just people, right? And you build these relationships with brands, but you're not really building with relationships with the brand. It's the people that's in them. And if it sounds really obvious, but until you go and you start to get to know them, you don't quite realize the power of good relationships. And as you said before, right, you just don't want to work with assholes. Like it's so important. And we're such a small industry. A lot of brands require cooperation with other brands in order to survive. So I think it's absolutely fascinating how in depth that you've been working with Kunos, and how it's a shared passion project that's led to its success, because it just wouldn't work any other way, right?
Exactly.
If they'd left that bump in, or they'd left that tree out,
Yeah.
then people would know.
They would know, but again, this shows, like, for me, the passion. Like, let's kind of finalize this whole thing without me being able to give away too much about Evo at this certain point in time, because we all know it's going to be public very soon, and there are a couple of more announcements. You can expect a couple of more announcements probably in the recent time. But the only thing that people need to know, if Kunos puts so much thought into, like, finalizing DLC of Nordschleife track for, like, a relatively old game at the time, to making it perfect after some local guy gave some inputs, in this case me telling like, hey, maybe you should change the bumps and humps for this particular track. How much time do you think they are actually going to put in a completely new title that is right now promising to be this big from the things that you have seen, let alone what you're about most likely to see? So I'm really excited that when everyone will know what Evo is really about, and the only thing I can tell you is, like, you have no clue. Even if there is going to be open world, what everyone is speculating, the possibilities behind it and attached to it is completely way beyond what is going to be. And it's going to be super. I would say even that might be the reason why I might just quit the real life Nordschleife endeavors.
You'd quit driving in the real world because of AC Evo?
Yeah, because it might have the same things and not endangering me driving shitboxes, because I can drive shitboxes in AC Evo on the absolute limit. So.
Okay, Misha, you've given us so much of your time already. I want to get to some community questions now, although I could ask, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. And the first question, I think is really interesting, and it's going to go one way or the other. It's going to be, anyway, I'm not going to try and get ahead of the question, but I'm intrigued. I thought this was a fantastic question. This is from Carrot1401, great username, on the TraxionGG Discord. Says, what would you change about the ring given the opportunity?
Ooh, okay, so I'm going to answer it in a completely different way. I would change nothing about the track, because the track for me is the best track in the world, and I always say it. And it's fantastic and it's amazing, because the reason why it's the best, because it incorporates everything there is to it. So it has the high speed sections, it has the slow speed sections, the corners, the bumps, the elevation changes, you name it. This is why it's so exciting, and there is nothing else out there like anything else. But, and that's gonna, like, cause me a lot of trouble probably, maybe, for saying that, I would change the way the track is being run, I would say, when it comes to rules and certain Germanness of things. We have sometimes very weird rules that are being enforced. So let's say, on one hand, last year they banned the cars that cannot drive faster than 130 kilometers per hour, because the speed difference to the modern cars is too high, and therefore those cars might cause some sort of risk factor. At the same time, they say you should not be driving too fast and like an asshole, because public sessions Nurburgring is there, like just like a public session, public road, you need to drive slow, etc., etc. But they understand the speed difference factor, so they say, okay, let's get rid of the old cars. At the same time, the use of Hans system during public session is not allowed, because it's not allowed during also in the normal traffic laws. So you're not allowed to use these systems that are there to make sure that your neck is going to stay in one place in case of an impact, with extremely fast cars that nowadays are driving around there. So that is not allowed because according to the traditional German traffic road rules, the Hunt system is preventing you from looking in your mirrors. I'm sorry, when in 2021 I was driving a Dacia Logan in 24 hours of Nurburgring, the slowest car to ever enter the grid probably, I still had to look in my mirrors for fast everything that was out there on the track, let alone GT3 cars that were coming up like with 6 times more speed. And I had no problem seeing them and moving over to the side. So the argument that Hans is preventing you from looking in your mirrors is not working. At the same time, last year they banned like pickup trucks.
Right.
Why? Why? You know, there are so many things that make zero sense when it comes to like, let's come up with the rule because the rule has been existing. And the most favorite thing that local Germans say here is like, that's how we've been doing things around here. And that's how we could keep on doing them. So yeah, that's the thing that I would change, is to be actually more modern and look at the actual core of the problem and come up with a solution. And in this case, maybe like if you're already changing the laws where you say like, okay, yes, it's a public road, but cars slower than 130 kilometers per hour cannot go. Yes, it's a public road, but pickup trucks are not allowing. Then you might say like, yeah, it's a public road, but we do allow use of Hunt system because we understand we might save people from injuries.
Yeah,
So
there's not a ton of logic there. Well, all I will
exactly.
say is Misha for Nordschleife for president. Okay, next question is from Charles on YouTube. He's responded to our YouTube community question this morning. He asks, out of all the cars you've driven around the ring, what's your best power to fun ratio?
Anything.
So the most fun for the least power, I guess.
I would say any K-swap Civic, B-swap Civic, anything that's naturally aspirated, high revving, is lightweight. So anything around or preferably under 1,000 kilos, you're gonna have fantastic fun with. So yeah, ideally like around between 150 to 300 horsepower and between 1,000 and 800 kilos. Like that's the most fun you're gonna have with. You don't need, because even the lap times are going to be quite good by then, because it's the power to weight ratio is quite good, but the amount of fun you're gonna have, and the most importantly, engagement that you get as a driver, because you need to heel and toe, maybe you don't even have ABS, you need to really rev it out, you need to be in an optimum power band, you need to really push it through the corners, and you can push it through the corners because the grip levels allow you to. It's for me, those are the most fun cars, and I cannot wait for the day that I get to build a very fast Civic, I would say. So yeah.
Okay, I've just had there's another. So I'm looking at the list at the moment, and one came in 2 minutes ago, and this is a really interesting one from a guy called a person, I guess, called Pixel Pusher. This is again on our YouTube, and they said one of my favorite episodes was your lap riding shotgun with Walter Rule at the wheel, especially your brief chat at the end. Have you had another driver on your channel that made you starstruck?
No. So again, I'm not that often starstruck because I would say I'm never starstruck when you look at how I behave around people or whatsoever, because I do, even seeing what kind of situations I end up being myself in the last few years with the following I have, I start to appreciating a lot more when people treat me in the normal way, and let alone how these kind of people might feel what with the level of their fame and following that they're getting. I try to be just like as normal as possible. I would say the same. Like one of my favorite stories I'm telling is of me having a passenger ride with Robert Kubica, like what, in 2020, the ex Formula One driver, the WEC, etc. I had no idea who he was at the time, literally, and more people so as well, because he ended up at Apex because he went to another rental car company and asked to rent a car, and people told him you need to have an instructor. It's like, what? Do you know who I am? So you went to Apex, and luckily it was not me at the desk, but someone else, because I would have said the same. I would say like, I have no clue who you are, dude. You need an instructor. But luckily someone else was starstruck and said like, you can have whatever you want, just take it, go have fun. And then I came like the next day or something, I came in the office and everyone was like losing their mind. I'm like, what the hell's happening? Yeah, you know, Robert Kubica is driving a car. Like, what? Who? No idea, literally. Anyway, he came back I think that because he had the car for the full day, for the full week, and then the next day I actually met him because I came in when the track was about to open. And like, so you're that Robert Kubica guy, right? Like, yeah. Like, hey, can we go for a lap? Maybe like, I'd like to make a video if you don't mind. It's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And yeah, we made the video. I never expected it to do anything well. I thought like, oh, maybe I'm gonna have 100,000 views for whatever reason, and it ended up now we are over 10 million views, I think, and it had a million views after 12 hours or so. So it was a big
That's
thing.
crazy.
But for me, the thing that I will remember the most, it's not the way he was driving, it's not the way how he was or whatsoever. For me, one thing I will always remember. He was there for DTM weekend, and since he's Polish, he has a massive Polish following. People were actually driving from Poland to watch him race at DTM on the Nurburgring. And some people found out that he was actually at Apex. So either because they saw some pictures of him driving the car, or because they actually stopped by. And there was one family with a father, mom, and a kid who was probably 5 years old or something. I don't know. And he was there with the model car of his DTM car, and he was showing it to him. And Robert, of course, signed the car, but the kid kept on talking about absolute childhood nonsense, But Robert was like, like listening to him and talking about the cars and showing him like what the wing would do and whatsoever. And then the track would open, and he had his BMW people with him saying, "Robert, track's open. We need to go for a lap before someone crashes and closes the track." And he said, "Shut up. Fuck you. I asked you, can you give me a car, BMW, so I can drive the Nurburgring? You said no. Now I rented the car myself that I'm paying for, and now you're pushing me to go laps with you. You sit down in the corner and wait till I'm done here, actually spending time with fans that are here for me, with me, the reason why I'm here." And he ended up talking to the kid for the next 5 or 10 minutes, and indeed someone crashed and they closed the track and they had to wait additional 45 minutes to reopen. But that was for me like important, like eye-opening thing, like again the priorities in life, not go out drive or something, but actually. And to that kid, those 5 minutes or 10 minutes will mean a lifetime for them, like, because who knows, maybe that kid is going to be in 10 years driving go-kart racing, Formula 3, and eventually maybe F1, because he actually looks up now to Robert Kubica, who is now not only a race car driver but a fantastic human being. And that is for me like something that I will always remember. And there are a couple of more examples in the car world, like Tom Christensen is another one that I have similar experiences with, who are absolute, like Walter Earl as well, who are absolute gem of a human being who would take all the time they have and dedicate to their fans that they absolutely have no idea who they are. And vice versa, you have also other people who might be the best driver in the world winning F1 driver, not naming any names because there are plenty of them, who might be absolute trash of a human being who just there like completely starstruck and being a full diva because they won something in a similar type of car or something whatsoever. Anyway.
Well, honestly, that is a beautiful story of what's important in life. I have a follow-up question, which is: have you ever been starstruck by a car that you've been able to drive?
No.
Interesting.
No,
you walk around.
Simple answer is no. I mean, yes, okay. When the latest and the best and the brand new GT3 RS comes out and I get to drive it for the first time, I'm like, oh my god, Porsche, you've outdone yourselves. It's again the best car ever. But I think and the content on my channel proves so, it's usually the cars that are the least expected that they end up performing in such a great way, whether it's some Civic, whether it is a V10 swapped E46 M3, Yeah, those cars are actually like, you kind of hope they're gonna do something nice, but they end up outperforming them in a way.
Well, Code-Breaking 369 Segway has asked an interesting question along the same lines. He asks, which road car is the most enjoyable for you to drive on the Nordschleife in stock trim?
The best one is, I don't think we should mention GT3 RS, because that's actually like really
Yeah.
track built car that you can drive on the road for whatever reason without having the frunk. So aside from GT3 RS, or even for that way 992 GT3, because you can drive it on the road and have decent fun with it, I think BMW M3 CS. So the current G series, the G80 CS, that is for me the best track optimized car, but you still have all the luxury and infotainment and the luggage space and etc. So I'm really waiting for uh, M3 CS Touring, because that is going to be probably like the absolutely best of both worlds. So yeah, in short, from all the experiences that I had, that's the best car right
Okay.
now.
Well, I mean, Code-Breaking 369 is your lucky day because the guy's cheeky and he's asked 2 questions. But the second one is one that I actually forgot to ask earlier, which I would have been strung up if I had not asked. Which sim is your favorite for driving the Nordschleife? That exists
Oof.
right now.
Actually, uh, well, I enjoy the first Assetto Corsa, because for me, I just drive the Nordschleife, and even though it has so many things that are outdated in terms of the jump at Flugplatz, the curb at Foxhole, uh, all the other bumps and inequalities, the ability for me, who values the time in life more than anything, the ability to just jump in, press start, and pick a car and go,
Yeah, yeah.
that for me actually is, for me personally, is the defining factor.
Mm.
Um, Otherwise, it would be iRacing, because you can still pick the the Nordschleife or in tourist layout.
Mm-hmm.
But iRacing kills for me, like, you need to start up, you need to update. Oh, there's an update for a left corner, and because there's a flower growing now, and you need to ray trace download this stuff. By the time, for me personally, by the time some upload is finished, I already need to do something else with my life. Like that time for me is gone. So that is for me like the big thing that kills for me in iRacing, is like this whole very long procedure of having to do it or whatsoever. And the limited amount of cars, because the reason why Assetto Corsa is so favored by everyone is the modding community, etc.,
Of
etc.
course.
Yeah. Um, the I do not, and funnily enough, although the Nordschleife version is the best in ACC Competizione, the DLC is the most realistic one whatsoever. For me, the lack of cars there, other than
Mm.
GT4 and GT3, kind
Yeah.
of kills the vibe for me personally, because the majority of time that I spend driving is in real cars with little downforce, little grip levels on the tires. I need to know what happens when shitbox breaks out, and I need to catch it. I cannot rely on high downforce levels.
Mm.
So that is um, very different reasons why I prefer the most simple one, because it's quick, it offers all the real life scenarios for me to drive in, but it's the least realistic version of the Nordschleife. Um, yeah, although you can have all the like mods, etc., to make it better, but that is for me the one that I drive the most, and then followed probably by iRacing, and then followed by ACC, because of course you have to drive also the GP track. And people who know me, I hate the GP track, so I don't care about that one. So that's for me, GP track. This means per lap I'm wasting 3 minutes that I can do doing something else, like with my life. So that's a very detailed,
Well,
specific answer.
given that you value speed, you're going to like this next section of the podcast. And this is the final part. And again, thank you for giving us so much time because you're clearly
Mhm.
one of the most busy people I've ever met. This is our quick fire round. Okay. So there's 5 questions. We need a 1-word answer. Oh, no,
Mhm.
not a 1-word answer, just a short answer, but you can't think about it. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
short answers, short questions, limited thinking time. You ready?
Go for it.
What is the best motorsport moment of all time?
24 hours of Nurburgring, except for this year because it was the most horrible moment of all time.
Mario Kart or iRacing?
iRacing.
Why is sim racing the best?
Oof. That cannot be a short answer. Come on, you're killing your own podcast.
Rules is rules. Rules is rules.
No, why is it the best? Because it simulates the real life scenario without you having to crash and pay for the bills, and you can live your dreams, and it actually offers the same level of excitement as the real car might do, and you will not end up missing out, and you can hide behind the username and have a lots of haters who don't know your real face and name, and there's a lots of reasons to it, and it's cheaper than actual real life racing. So let's start with that.
Why does sim racing suck?
Okay, why does it suck? Because it's still not real as of today. You do not have the G-forces, you do not have the smell of the tires, of the brake pads, your sweaty race suit when you come out of the car, and things are still not real. And although it's comes very close, it's still not there. Plus, because 9-year-old kid can beat some Formula One driver in real life because he's a fast sim racer, and that's why all professional drivers hate sim racers.
Who should we invite to the Sim Sundays podcast next?
Was Jimmy here?
Not yet.
Broadbent? I'll message him because he just sent me a WhatsApp about some other family stuff. So yeah, I'll ask him if he wants to do it. I think he's gonna be a good guest.
Misha, thank you so much for giving us so much time. I know that all of our listeners are going to really, really enjoy this episode. We straddled car culture, racing, and sim racing, which is just the holy trinity of what we want to talk about on this podcast. And good luck with all of the many, many endeavors that you're working on. And I'm looking forward to the Misha Charoudin AC EVO DLC pack coming out later next year.
I hope so too. Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. I really enjoyed talking to you. Great questions also from your community. It was nice to have something different other than what is your favorite car to drive or the fastest you've ever driven. This generic stuff that we answered to multiple times. No, it was amazing. Yeah, looking forward to seeing the reception of this, and again also to do more with sim racing myself in the coming months when the Assetto Corsa EVO is going to come out. Yeah, so
great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that was an enlightening conversation there, Tom, with Misha. He drives members of the public cars around the Nurburgring that have been modified. Rather him than me. I think it's rather he's living on the edge a bit there. But yeah, really cool to hear about his potential involvement with Kunos Simulazioni and Assetto Corsa in various forms and racing alongside some sim racing stars.
Yeah, and he didn't give too much away, especially the AC Evo bits, and that's understandable. But he did say that we could be expecting some news very soon, which is exciting. Yeah, I think that will go down as one of my favorite episodes of all time on the TraxionGG podcast. I really, really enjoyed that. He was very warm. He was very welcoming, and he said beforehand that we have as much time as we want, and enjoy the fact that there was a focus on sim racing rather than the usual questions. So yeah, we won't make this outro too long because you've already been with us for an hour and 15 minutes at this point. But remember, if you want to get involved with our podcast and you want to send in your questions and you want to hear who the guests are ahead of time, join us in the Traxion.GG Discord. Make sure you're following us on YouTube, where we post on the community bit of YouTube. And of course, follow us on X, Facebook, Instagram, blah, 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 so that you can be involved and send in your questions. Great questions this week, by the way. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next time on an episode of Sim Sundays on the TraxionGG podcast.
Thanks for listening.